The moment Megan Hayes handed me the sunscreen, I thought I knew exactly what she wanted. We were sitting on a sun-warmed dock at Lake Tahoe while our friends argued over kayaks 20 yards away. Megan pushed her sunglasses onto her head and held out the bottle. "Can you get my shoulders?" she asked. Simple. Normal. Then she turned and looked straight at me. "Actually, Ryan, I want to ask you something else. If I asked you to take me on one real date, no jokes, no pretending it's just dinner between friends, would you run?" I forgot how to breathe. For 7 years, Megan had been the person I called first and the woman I'd trained myself not to want. What I didn't know was that she had already made a decision that could take her hundreds of miles away. Before that weekend ended, I would discover that our friendship had been built around more unspoken sacrifice than either of us understood. If you've ever wondered whether risking a friendship is worth the chance at love, subscribe. And tell me in the comments, would you say yes or protect what you already had? I was 29 that summer, old enough to know that the most dangerous moments in life rarely arrived with warning music. Sometimes they arrived in a plastic bottle of SPF 50. Megan was 25, 4 years younger than me, and had been my best friend since our first year at California State University, Sacramento. I had started college late. My father's hardware store had nearly gone under after he got sick. So I spent 4 years after high school working construction, balancing the books at night, and helping my mother keep the family afloat. By the time I finally enrolled at 22, I felt ancient compared with most freshmen. Megan, at 18, was the youngest person in our calculus study group and the only one who looked at my work boots and asked whether I had come directly from a job site instead of assuming they were some kind of fashion statement. Back then, there was nothing romantic between us. Not for me, anyway. She was sharp, restless, impossible to intimidate, and more interested in finishing her environmental policy degree than in dating anyone for longer than a semester. I was still carrying the exhausted seriousness of someone who had spent too many nights wondering whether a hospital bill would take his parents' house. We became friends because she needed help with physics and I needed help remembering that life could be funny. 7 years later, we had become the kind of friends who knew the codes to each other's apartment buildings, the names of each other's dentists, and exactly which silence meant I'm tired versus something is wrong. Somewhere in those 7 years, the line changed. I could never point to one moment. Maybe it was the winter Megan drove 3 hours through freezing rain to sit with me after my father's second heart surgery. Maybe it was the way she always stole the olives from my pizza and left me the crusts because she knew I liked them. Maybe it was the night she called me from a parking garage after breaking up with a man who had spent 6 months making her feel as if every ambition she had was an inconvenience. Or maybe it was simpler. Maybe I had loved her for a long time and called it friendship, because friendship was the one thing I was sure I knew how to keep. Our Tahoe trip was supposed to be uncomplicated. 5 of us had rented 2 neighboring cabins on the California side of the lake for a long weekend in July. Megan, me, our friends Lucas Kim and Priya Shah, and Ben Torres, who had appointed himself director of outdoor activities despite owning exactly 1 pair of hiking shoes. We'd been taking some version of that trip since college. The locations changed. The people occasionally changed. The basic ritual did not. Drive too far. Buy too much food. Make fun of Ben's playlists. Spend 3 days pretending we were not adults with deadlines and rent and family obligations. That year, though, Megan had been strange from the moment she climbed into my truck. Not cold, not distant, intentional. She kept looking at me when she thought I was watching the road. Twice I caught her opening her mouth as if she meant to say something, then changing her mind. At the gas station outside Placerville, she bought a bag of peach rings, tossed it onto the center console, and said, "You know you're terrible at noticing when something important is happening, right?" I glanced at her. That sounds like a suspiciously specific accusation. It is. Want to explain? Nope. She smiled out the window. That should have warned me. Instead, I ate half her candy and drove us into the mountains. By noon the next day, the lake was so blue it looked unreal. Ben and Lucas dragged 2 kayaks into the water. Priya followed them with a waterproof camera and the patience of a woman who had spent years documenting her friend's bad decisions. Megan stayed on the dock. I had stayed too, mostly because I had twisted my knee 2 weeks earlier at a job site and had no interest in giving Ben the satisfaction of watching me fall out of a kayak. Megan wore shorts, a loose white linen shirt over a dark green swimsuit, and an expression I had seen only a handful of times in 7 years. Nervous. Then she handed me the sunscreen. Then she asked the question that rearranged the entire weekend. "If I asked you to take me on one real date," she said, "would you run?" My hand froze around the bottle. She waited. Across the water, Ben shouted something about a race. Lucas told him nobody had agreed to a race. Priya laughed. On the dock, the world narrowed to Megan's face. I finally said, "Are you asking me hypothetically?" Her mouth twitched. "That depends on whether your hypothetical answer humiliates me." "Megan. Ryan. Are you serious?" That little twitch disappeared. Completely. I had imagined versions of that moment before. More than I wanted to admit. Usually in those imaginary versions, I was smooth. I said something clever. I made her laugh. I told her the truth without looking like a man whose brain had temporarily shut down. Reality was less impressive. I stared at her long enough that she folded her arms. "Okay," she said softly. "That might be worse than running." "No." I set the sunscreen down so fast it tipped over. "No. I'm not saying no." "Then what are you saying?" I'm trying to figure out if I hit my head. She laughed once, but her eyes stayed serious. I moved closer, lowering my voice. "Why now?" Something flickered across her face. There it was again. That sense that she had arrived at the lake carrying a sentence she had not yet said. "Because," she replied, "I'm tired of pretending I don't care every time you mention another woman." That answer landed harder than the question. I stared at her. Megan looked down at the water. "There, I said it. I hate when you tell me someone from work wants to set you up. I hated that woman from Davis who kept sending you photos of her sourdough starter. Her name was Rachel. I know her name, that's the problem." I laughed before I could stop myself. Megan pointed at me. "Do not laugh while I'm risking 7 years of friendship. I'm not laughing at you." "You are literally laughing." "I'm laughing because I spent 6 months pretending Rachel's bread photos were interesting because I thought you were dating that physical therapist from your gym." Her eyebrows lifted. "Evan?" "Yes. I went out with him twice." "You went to Napa with him. It was a group trip. You posted a photo with his arm around you. He was drunk and about to fall into a planter." I rubbed both hands over my face. Megan stared at me. And then the absurdity reached her too. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Yeah, we are idiots." "Apparently." She leaned back on her palms. "So what does that mean?" It meant I had spent years choosing the safest possible interpretation of everything between us. It meant every time she curled up on my couch during a movie, I told myself she was comfortable because I was harmless. It meant every time she reached for my hand in a crowded place, I decided it was practical. It meant when she called me after bad dates, I convinced myself she wanted the opinion of a brother. I looked at her. "It means if you're actually asking me on a date," I said, "I'm saying yes." She breathed out, not dramatically, just enough that I realized she had been holding that breath for longer than I had. "One date," she said. One real date. No pretending it's just 2 friends who happen to choose a place with table service. I can handle that. No inviting Lucas because you panic. I've never invited Lucas because I panic. You invited him to my birthday dinner after you found out I was bringing a date. That was strategic. That was cowardly. Probably. Her smile came back warmer now. Then she picked up the sunscreen bottle and placed it in my hand. Good, she said. Now you can get my shoulders. I nearly dropped it again. That evening, I made a reservation at a small restaurant on the West Shore called Harbor Pine. It sat above the lake behind a row of tall pines, with a deck full of string lights and tables close enough to the water that you could hear small waves against the rocks. The others reacted exactly as badly as expected when we told them we were going into town alone. Ben looked from me to Megan and said, "Should I pretend this is normal?" Priya slapped his arm. Lucas only smiled. That smile bothered me. "What?" I asked. "Nothing." "You know something. I know lots of things." "About this?" Megan cut in. "Lucas, if you enjoy having a place to sleep tonight, stop talking." He raised both hands. I looked at her. She pointed toward my truck. "Date. Now." For the first 10 minutes of the drive, we were quieter than we had been in years. That was the first strange thing about dating my best friend. Silence with Megan had never felt uncomfortable before. Now every pause seemed charged with the awareness that we had changed the rules. At a red light in Tahoe City, she said, "This is weird." "Thank God." "You think it's weird too?" "I've known what shampoo you use since 2021. I'm trying to decide whether I'm supposed to compliment your hair. You could try. Your hair looks nice." She laughed. "Terrible. I warned you." "Try again." I looked at her. The teasing faded. "You look beautiful," I said. The light changed. The truck behind us honked. Megan looked away, smiling. That was better. At Harbor Pine, we sat across from each other with the lake turning gold behind her. For once, we did not talk about work first. She asked me when I'd started thinking about her as more than a friend. I told her I did not know. That's evasive. It's accurate. Give me a year. I thought about it, maybe 3 years ago. Her eyes widened. 3? Maybe longer? Ryan Foster? I said maybe. 3 years and you said nothing? You were dating people. So were you. Badly. That part is true. I smiled, then looked down at my glass. The real answer, I said, is that you matter too much to me. If I told you and you didn't feel the same, I didn't know how to go back. Megan was quiet. And if I did feel the same, she asked, that was worse. Why? Because then I could lose you in more ways. She studied me. That is possibly the most Ryan answer you could have given. What does that mean? You treat emotional risk like a bridge inspection. You assume the structure fails unless you can prove otherwise. I'm a civil engineer. That is literally my job. I know. She smiled, but there was sadness behind it. What about you? I asked. When did this start? Megan traced the rim of her water glass. I think I knew for sure last winter, after Christmas. She nodded. We had driven to Truckee then too, just the two of us, because Megan had insisted I needed a weekend away from work. A storm had closed the highway earlier than expected, and we spent 8 hours in a cheap motel watching old game shows and eating vending machine pretzels. Nothing romantic had happened. At least I'd told myself nothing romantic had happened. You fell in love with me because I let you have the bed? I asked. I fell in love with you because you sat on the floor at 2 a.m. and helped me rewrite my grant proposal after I told you I was thinking about giving up on it? I stopped smiling. Megan looked toward the lake. You didn't tell me to be realistic. You didn't tell me maybe my boss was right. You just said, okay, show me the part they don't understand yet. I remembered the night clearly. I had not remembered it as important. To her it had been. That was the first time, she continued, I realized I wanted the person sitting beside me during the hard parts to also be the person beside me during everything else. There are moments when happiness is almost painful. That was one. I reached across the table. Megan looked at my hand, then placed hers in it. We had held hands before, crossing icy streets, running through airports. Once during a horror movie she claimed she was not afraid of. This felt different because neither of us had an excuse. After dinner, we walked down to the water. The restaurant had a narrow path leading to a small public beach, mostly empty at that hour. The air had cooled. Megan wrapped her arms around herself. I took off my jacket and gave it to her. She slid it on. "Very boyfriend-like," she said. "Do not give me a performance review on the first date. I'm gathering data. I'm going home." She caught my sleeve. "No running, remember?" I turned back. She was standing very close. The jokes disappeared again. "Megan," I said, "I know." "Do you?" "Probably." I touched her cheek. She did not move away. Our first kiss was quiet. That surprised me. After 7 years of tension I had refused to name, I expected something cinematic. Fireworks, music, the lake itself applauding. Instead, it was warm and careful and terrifyingly familiar, like recognizing a home you had somehow never entered. When we pulled apart, Megan rested her forehead against mine. "Well," she whispered. "Well, that was not terrible." High praise. She laughed. Then her expression changed. "I need to tell you something." My stomach tightened. "What?" She looked down at the sand, then back at me. "Tomorrow." I stepped away slightly. "That sounds ominous." "It isn't bad. That is exactly what people say before bad news." "Ryan, if it affects this, tell me now." She held my gaze. "It affects the timing," she said, "not what I just told you. I promise. I should have pushed." Instead, I nodded. Maybe because she had already taken the bigger risk that day. Maybe because I was happy and selfishly wanted one night before reality entered. "Tomorrow," I said. She squeezed my hand. "Tomorrow." The next morning, Megan asked me to hike with her before everyone else woke up. We took a trail along the western ridge where the trees opened every few minutes to reveal the lake below. The air was cool, and the only sounds were our shoes on dirt and birds moving through the pines. For the first mile, we talked about nothing. Then Megan stopped at an overlook. There was a weathered bench facing the water. She sat. I remained standing. "You're making me nervous," I said. "I know." "That is not reassuring." She patted the bench. I sat beside her. Megan took a breath. "I got the Seattle job." For a second, I did not understand what she meant. Then I did. 6 months earlier, she had applied for a national program director position with the Northwest Resilience Collaborative, a nonprofit that worked with communities rebuilding after wildfires and floods. It was the kind of job she had been working toward for years. Larger scope, better funding, real authority. She had made it through 2 rounds of interviews. Then she stopped talking about it. I assumed she had not gotten it. "You got it," I repeated. She nodded. "When?" 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks? I looked out at the lake. "When were you planning to tell me?" "This weekend, before or after asking me out?" "I didn't know." I stood. Megan's shoulders tensed. "Ryan." "No, I'm not angry." "You look angry." "I'm trying not to be." I accepted it. That stopped me. "You accepted?" "Yes." "When do you leave?" 5 weeks." The words hit harder than they should have. Seattle was not another country. It was a flight away. People managed long-distance relationships across oceans. But we had just crossed a line I had been afraid to cross for years, and suddenly there was a clock on the wall. I shoved my hands into my pockets. Was last night a goodbye date? No. Then what was it? The truth. Megan. She stood too. I got the offer, and all I could think was that I was about to leave without ever finding out whether this thing between us was real. So you wanted to check before you went? Her face hardened. That is not what I said. It sounds like it. I asked you because I want you, Ryan, not because I needed some romantic souvenir before moving. I looked away. She stepped closer. You're allowed to be upset about the timing. You're allowed to wish I'd told you earlier, but don't reduce what I asked yesterday to some pre-departure experiment. I turned back. She was right. That irritated me mostly because I knew it immediately. I'm sorry. Megan's expression softened, but not completely. I should have told you 3 weeks ago. Why didn't you? Because every time I imagined it, I pictured you saying exactly what you're about to say. What am I about to say? That it's too complicated. I did not answer. She gave a small, humorless laugh. See? I'm not saying that. You're thinking it. I'm thinking about my firm, my mother, your job, flights, weekends. Whether this has a chance if we start with you leaving. You're doing a bridge inspection. That is getting old. It's still true. I paced to the edge of the overlook. Below us, sunlight moved across the lake. Megan came to stand beside me. I'm not asking you to move, she said. I'm not asking you to promise me forever after one date. I'm asking whether what happened yesterday matters enough to keep finding out. I looked at her. What if it ruins the friendship? Her eyes filled with something sharper than hurt. Ryan, the friendship is already changed. I knew that too. She continued, quieter now. I don't want to go back to pretending. Even if this turns out to be difficult. Even if it turns out not to work. I would rather know we were brave enough to try than spend another 5 years joking our way around it. For most of my life, courage had meant endurance. Working when I was tired. Solving problems. Staying calm when other people panicked. Megan had always understood courage differently. Sometimes it meant asking a question before you knew whether you could survive the answer. I reached for her hand. 5 weeks, I said. 5 weeks here. And then? Then we figure out the next week. That is not a plan. No. It's an agreement not to quit before we have information. I looked at her. You've been spending too much time with me. I know. It's tragic. I smiled despite myself. Then I pulled her closer and kissed her again. That should have been the hard part. It wasn't. The hard part began after Tahoe. Dating your best friend is not like starting from zero. You skip whole categories of discovery. I already knew Megan hated cilantro and loved old crime novels. She knew I cleaned when anxious and called my mother every Sunday, even when we had nothing new to say. I knew she needed quiet for 20 minutes after a bad work day. She knew that if I said, I'm fine, while reorganizing a kitchen drawer, I was absolutely not fine. But there were other things we had to learn from the beginning. How to say goodnight when neither of us wanted to leave. How to disagree when the stakes felt different. How to make space for desire without using friendship as camouflage. The first week after Tahoe, I took her to a bookstore cafe in Midtown because she had once told me the best dates involved coffee and the possibility of buying something unnecessary. She bought 3 books. I bought none. You're bad at dates, she informed me. I bought dinner. That was practical. I bought you coffee. Coffee, also practical. What exactly qualifies as romance? She held up a hardcover mystery novel, Enabling. So I bought it for her. She kissed me outside under a broken neon sign and said, Improvement. The second week, she took me to a minor league baseball game, even though she did not care about baseball, because I had mentioned once 2 years earlier that my father used to take me when I was a kid. Halfway through the 5th inning, she leaned against my shoulder. Your dad would have liked this, she said. I swallowed. Yeah. My father had died 18 months earlier. Megan had been there through every part of it. Hospital corridors, funeral flowers, The first Sunday when I realized I no longer had anyone to call who would answer with, "What did you break this time?" I had spent my whole life believing grief was something you carried privately, so it did not become weight for other people. Megan never asked me to hand it over. She just walked beside me while I carried it. That was probably why what happened the following Saturday scared me so much. I was helping her pack. Her apartment was already half dismantled. Books filled cardboard boxes. Framed photos leaned against the wall. The empty spaces made her move feel suddenly real. I was taping a box in her bedroom when Megan called from the kitchen. "Have you seen the black marker?" "Desk drawer?" "Checked." I opened the narrow drawer beside her bed. No marker. I tried the lower one. Inside were old receipts, a passport holder, 2 pens, and a thick envelope with the Northwest Resilience Collaborative logo. I recognized the name immediately. The envelope looked older than the one she had shown me from the current offer. The paper was creased. I should have closed the drawer. Instead, I saw the date. 14 months earlier. Megan? She came into the room holding the marker. Found it. I held up the envelope. Her face changed. Not guilt. Something more complicated. "What is this?" She set the marker down. "Ryan, you got an offer last year?" Silence. That was answer enough. I opened the envelope only after she nodded. It was a formal offer for a regional strategy position in Seattle. Different title. Same organization. The start date had been the previous September. I looked at her. "You never told me." "No." "Why?" She sat on the edge of the bed. I kept standing. "That was when your mom was starting radiation," she said. My chest tightened. My mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer 3 months after my father died. The year that followed was a blur of doctors, work, paperwork, and fear. My sister Ava lived in Arizona with 2 young children and came when she could. But most of the daily responsibility fell to me. Megan had helped constantly. She drove my mother to appointments when I had site inspections. She brought groceries without asking. She sat in the hospital cafeteria with me the day we learned the treatment was working. I had always thought she was simply being Megan. "You turned down a job because of me, not because of you. That is exactly what you just said. No. I turned it down because I made a choice. Based on the whole situation. You stayed, yes, for me, for your family, for my life here, for several reasons." I stared at the letter. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew you would do this." "Do what? Turn it into a debt? It cost you a major job. And it was my decision." "You worked for years for something like this, I know." I dropped the letter onto the bed. "That makes it worse." Megan stood. "No, it makes it mine." I looked at her. She crossed her arms. "I need you to hear me very carefully. You did not ask me to stay. Your mother did not ask me to stay. I chose it because at that point in my life, leaving felt wrong. I had reasons beyond you. And yes, one of those reasons was that I loved you, even if I wasn't ready to say it." The room seemed smaller. "You loved me then?" She closed her eyes briefly. "That is the part you heard?" "I didn't know." "I know. You gave up Seattle because you loved me. I turned down one job offer. Same difference." "No, it is not." Her voice sharpened. "I am not a tragic woman who abandoned her dreams because a man needed her. I was 24 years old and made a complicated decision. I do not regret helping your family, but you applied again." "Yes." "Because you regretted staying." "No." The word came hard. I stopped. Megan took a breath. "I applied again because I realized something. I can love people and still choose my own life. I can be there for someone without making every decision around their needs. Last year I stayed. This year I'm going. Both can be true. I looked at the boxes around us. For the first time since Tahoe, fear stopped being theoretical. It became shame. I thought of every appointment she had covered, every meal, every night she answered the phone, all while carrying an opportunity she had never mentioned. My father had hated being dependent on anyone. During his illness, he apologized every time I helped him stand, every time I closed the store early, every time money got tight. Near the end, he once told me, "Never make somebody smaller just because you need them." I had built my adult life around that sentence. Now I looked at Megan and saw all the ways she had made room for my crisis. And something inside me twisted the wrong lesson out of love. "You should go," I said. She blinked. "I am going. No. I mean, you should really go." Fully. Her face went still. I heard how it sounded and kept talking anyway. "I don't think we should start asking you to split your life between Seattle and Sacramento when you already delayed this once. I'm not asking permission. That's not what I mean." "Then what do you mean?" I rubbed the back of my neck. "I think maybe we got caught up in Tahoe." Her eyes changed. That was the moment I knew I had made a mistake. I could have stopped. I didn't. "You were leaving," I continued. "We had all this history. Maybe it made everything feel more urgent than it is." Megan stared at me. "Say the actual sentence, Ryan." "What?" "Don't bury it under analysis. Say what you're trying to say." I hated that she knew me well enough to demand clarity. "I think we should step back." She nodded once, very slowly. "Because I turned down a job last year. Because I don't want to be the reason you make your life smaller." Her eyes filled, but she did not look away. "You are doing it again." "Doing what?" "Choosing for me. I'm trying to protect you." "From what? Loving you?" "From sacrificing your career. I am taking the job. I know." "Then what sacrifice are you preventing?" I had no answer. She laughed once without humor. "This is incredible. Megan, no. You don't get to discover that I made one difficult choice a year ago and use it as evidence that I can't be trusted with my own life. That's not what I'm saying." "It is exactly what you're saying." She stepped closer. You are so afraid of being a burden that you would rather become the person who leaves first." That hit. I looked away. She kept going. "You think if you reject me now, you get to call it noble because I'll go to Seattle with no attachments. But did you ever consider that maybe being loved by you is something I get to choose?" I felt heat rise behind my eyes. "Megan, did you?" "Yes. No." "You considered logistics. You considered guilt. You considered every possible future in which something goes wrong. You did not consider that I might know what I want. I don't want you to resent me. Then trust me enough to tell you if I do." Silence filled the room. I looked at the old offer letter on the bed. Megan's voice lowered. "I asked you one question on that dock." I met her eyes. "Would you run?" My throat tightened. She nodded, as if my silence had answered. Then she picked up the marker from the desk. "I guess I know now." She walked into the kitchen. I stood in the half-empty bedroom, surrounded by boxes I had been helping her pack for a future I had just removed myself from. For the next 4 days, we barely spoke. I told myself I was giving Megan space. The truth was that I was waiting for the pain to prove I had done the right thing. It never did. It only made ordinary moments feel wrong. I cooked too much pasta because I was used to saving some for her. I saw a ridiculous roadside sign and reached for my phone before remembering I had no idea whether she wanted to hear from me. On Wednesday, my mother asked if Megan was coming to dinner before she moved. I don't know. She studied me across her kitchen table. Her hair had grown back silver and soft after treatment. "What did you do?" I told her about the old Seattle offer and about telling Megan we should step back. My mother closed her eyes. "Oh, Ryan. You knew about the offer?" Megan told me after she declined it. She also made me promise not to tell you because she knew you would feel responsible. I am responsible. No, you were part of her decision. That is not the same thing. I looked away. My mother reached across the table. Your father spent half his life apologizing whenever anyone helped him. He believed accepting love put him in debt. You watched that and learned to make yourself unnecessary. I don't want Megan shrinking her life for me. Then don't ask her to. What if she does it anyway? Then trust her enough to talk about it. Ryan, people who love you are allowed to choose you. Refusing to let them choose is not generosity. It is control wearing polite clothes. The words hurt because they fit. The next morning, I went to work and told Daniel, my business partner, everything. He listened, then asked one question. Is Seattle impossible, or is it inconvenient? Inconvenient. Those are different. We spent 20 minutes looking at the reality I had turned into a catastrophe. Our Reading site meetings were every other Thursday. Half my design reviews were remote. I could work from Seattle 2 Fridays a month without damaging the firm. Megan could visit Sacramento when she wanted. Nothing was simple, but none of it was impossible. You don't need a perfect plan, Daniel said. You need to stop using uncertainty as a reason not to try. That afternoon, Priya called. Megan's start date moved up, she said. The person she's replacing had a family emergency. She flies next Friday, 1 week. I texted Megan, I know I hurt you. I'm not asking you to stay or change your job. I just need one chance to apologize without trying to manage the outcome. Harbor Pine tomorrow at 6, if you're willing. 3 hours later, she replied. 6? I arrived early? Of course I did. Megan came in wearing jeans and a blue sweater, looking tired but steady. We sat at the same lakeside table where we had spent our first date. I'm sorry, I said before fear could reorganize the sentence. I found out you gave up an opportunity last year, and I turned your choice into proof that loving me was dangerous for you. Then I made another choice for you. She folded her hands on the table. I thought I was protecting you, I continued. I was really protecting myself from guilt. If we tried and distance was hard, I was afraid I'd blame myself. If you ever changed a plan because of me, I was afraid I'd feel like my father did when people rearranged their lives around him. Megan's expression softened, but only slightly. I'm still angry. You should be. I'm still taking the job. I want you to. I don't know if long distance will work, neither do I. That surprised her. I leaned forward. I finally realized I was treating love like a test where the only safe answer was to need nothing. I don't want that anymore. The lake moved quietly beyond the railing. I love you, Megan. Her eyes closed for a second. I think I've loved you longer than I knew how to admit, I said. When something happens, you're the first person I want to tell. When I picture home, you are in it. I don't want to call that friendship just because friendship feels safer. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away, annoyed. Then, unexpectedly, she reached into her bag and placed a bottle of sunscreen on the table. I stared. The same brand? I asked. I bought it yesterday. Why? Because I was angry and apparently dramatic. I laughed. She pushed the bottle toward me. I kept thinking about the dock. I asked if you would run and you said no. Then you did. I know. So I'm asking again. Her voice shook. If I go to Seattle and I let you love me without promising this will be easy, are you going to run? I took her hand. No. Are you sure? I'm sure I'll get scared. I'm sure we'll get frustrated. I'm sure sometimes the distance will be awful. I tightened my fingers around hers, but I'm sure I'm not running. Megan stood, came around the table, and wrapped her arms around me. I held her. This is not an elegant reconciliation, she murmured. I had a spreadsheet. She pulled back. You made a spreadsheet? Technically a risk matrix? Oh my God. I deleted it. Good. Then she kissed me. 5 days later, I drove her to the airport. At security, Megan looked at the 2 suitcases beside her and then at me. I'm scared. Me too. What if we're terrible at long distance? Then we learn something. What if you meet someone easier? I touched her cheek. I had easier. I didn't want easier. She laughed through tears. Call me when you land. You call me when you get home, she said. I'm not the one flying. I know. I just want to hear your voice. That was when I understood the difference between being needed and being chosen. Long distance was messy. We missed calls. I canceled one trip because a bridge project went sideways. She spent 2 weeks traveling through eastern Washington during wildfire season and barely had energy to talk at night. We argued once because I kept saying I'm fine when I was lonely. Stop managing my feelings, she told me. So I admitted the truth. Nothing broke. That mattered. We learned that love could survive disappointment if neither person used silence as punishment. We learned that I miss you was not an accusation. We learned that helping each other did not create a debt. A year after Tahoe, Megan was offered a permanent regional position. The job was hybrid. She could stay in Seattle, move to Portland, or base herself in Sacramento while traveling throughout the West. When she called, I asked only, "What do you want?" She went quiet, then she said, "You have no idea how important that question is." I think I do. I want to come home. I miss Sacramento. I miss my friends. I want to work closer to the California programs. She paused. And yes, I want a life with you that doesn't require airport parking twice a month. The old version of me might have panicked at being part of her decision. This time I smiled. The following July, we went back to Lake Tahoe with the same group. On the second afternoon, everyone else took the kayaks out. Megan and I sat on the same dock. She wore a white linen shirt over a dark green swimsuit. Then she reached into her bag. I started laughing. No. She pulled out sunscreen. Can you get my shoulders? I know where this leads. Coward. I took the bottle and did as she asked. When I finished, she turned around. Still speechless? No, I said. Actually, I have something to ask you. I reached into my pocket and took out a small ring box. Megan froze. The ring had belonged to my grandmother. My mother had kept it for years. I had the setting restored and added a simple new band. I opened the box. The first time we sat here, you asked if I would run, I said. I did run later because loving you meant trusting a future I couldn't control. Her eyes filled. I can't promise our life will always be easy. I can promise I will not make your choices for you. I will tell you when I'm scared instead of pretending I'm fine. And I will keep choosing you even when the logistics are inconvenient. She laughed through her tears. That is the most romantic use of the word logistics I've ever heard. Megan Hayes, will you marry me? She grabbed my shirt and kissed me before answering. Yes. From the lake, Priya screamed. Lucas raised his paddle. Ben shouted, I knew it! And immediately tipped his kayak into the water. Megan laughed so hard I had to catch her. When she looked back at me, the ring flashed in the sun. A year earlier, I thought protecting our friendship meant keeping it unchanged. I was wrong. We had to lose the version built on careful silence before we could build something stronger. Love was not staying. It was not leaving. It was not sacrifice or perfect timing. It was choice. Again and again. Sometimes the brave thing was asking for a real date. Sometimes it was taking the job. Sometimes it was admitting you were angry or lonely. And sometimes it was standing on a dock with sunscreen in one hand and a ring in the other. Finally understanding that the person you loved had never asked you to guarantee the future. She had only asked whether you were willing to step into it with her. If this story stayed with you, remember this. Protecting a relationship is not the same as keeping it unchanged. Sometimes love begins when two people stop deciding for each other and start choosing each other instead. If you believe real love needs courage, trust, and room for both people to grow, like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, would you risk a lifelong friendship for the chance to build something deeper?